Hello, this is Josh Engebretson from Thunderbeast Games with a look at some of the new content pipeline improvements to the Atomic game engine. I have the Atomic editor open here and I have a basic scene. I'll go ahead and open that up. And so with the basics, I get a physics world, I get an octree, I get directional light, and one of the new things is we can actually collapse the components and node a bit over the inspector, which is kind of nice. And I have some models here. And so basically, the way you used to get models into the engine was pretty awful. It was a command line tool that would basically take in a Collada file, an FBX, whatever, spit out an MDL file, and at that point you could bring it into your project. What we have now is a little bit better. If I go into some source art here, I have a crate and a ground here that I want to use in this demonstration. So what I can do is these are just normal FBXs kicked out of 3D Studio Max or Blender or whatever, and I can drag and drop. So if I go ahead and drag those over to my models folder, what I get is I get them inside the engine, and they're immediately available to bring on over, which is another thing that's new. We actually have drag and drop from the resource over into the project. Woohoo. So I go ahead and delete these. So let's see, I brought this ground in, and it's kind of a cube really. So by the miracles of scaling, what I can do is I can make it more of a ground. And there we go. So now I kind of have a ground here. Now the ground isn't going to have any collision on it, it just has this static model on it. So what I need to do is I need to create a component, which is, this is also new. You can create components on nodes now. And we're going to do a collision shape, and we'll do it as a box, and then we'll just duplicate the scaling up there, because that's about what it'll be. And then one other thing we have to do is we have to create a rigid body on it, because if you don't have a rigid body, it will have no collision. Then we'll just keep the mass at 0 here, as what that does is it won't move. It will make that static. All right, so the next thing we'll do is let's go ahead and drag a crate out here, and we'll put him down about here. And I'm noticing that he's not casting any shadows, but that's easy to remedy. There. So now I can actually kind of see it. There's a shadow underneath them. If I go ahead, oh, there you go. So basically, that makes it a lot easier to place because you can kind of see where it's supposed to go. So now basically, if I save the scene and I hit play, I'm going to go into the new player, and I can kind of see that it is not quite right. Also, this is a pretty boring play because I have a static camera, and that is about it. So let's add a character. What I can do now is I have RoboMan, and I can just drag him out, and I can put him down, and let's have him cast shadows too. Let's have everything cast shadows, which will make it a lot easier. And the neat thing about RoboMan is he's actually got some script logic to him. So what I can do here is I can create a new component, a logic component, make that a JavaScript component, and then I can specify the RoboMan script. And if I go over here, I can see that this is the script that's going to be attached to him, which is actually quite simple. Just by virtue of the fact that I imported him before, that brought in all his skeletal animation and everything. He was also, that's another drag and drop operation to bring him in. And if I look at here, I have his animated model, I have his animation controller, and so the neat thing is that when the script component when it starts up, these already exist. So before, in a project or in a component, you would have to like instantiate all the nodes and things because there wasn't a way to do that before. So now it already exists, so all we have to do is grab the animation controller, and then we can just play as idle or as run or whatever. Okay. So now that that's all set up, I can do a save, and when I go back in, I should actually be able to run him around, which I can. But oh yeah, we have collision on that, but we did not put collision on our crate. So let's do that, and let's move it down while we're at it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a collision shape on there, and I'll just create these both really fast. We're going to use a box, and I happen to know that there should be 2 for its dimensions, and then we will Give it a mass of 1, and that should be, and the friction, it'll slide around pretty good. So let's go ahead and save this and hit play. And now we should be able to interact with the box, or the crate. It's a crate, damn it. All right, so now it would be kind of a drag if we had to do that every time, right? Like drag out a crate, add the collision shape, add the rigid body, make sure all the settings are right. But what we have now actually is we have prefabs. So I can go ahead and take this crate and I can drag it up into my prefabs, which makes a prefab. And now I can simply drag that prefab out, and we can already see that it's casting shadows. So the prefab kind of stuck. And I also can go over here in the inspector, and I can see that I have the collision shape, I have the rigid body, which has a lot of settings on it. So yeah, so now I've got 2 crates, which were drug up by the prefab. And let's go ahead and drag out another crate. Just because we can, right? Just that easy. I'll kind of put it on there, switch over to rotation, and kind of rotate it a bit. All right. Now, let's do that. All right. So now we have a couple crates. So the prefabs are working nicely, and that's a very convenient way to lay out stuff. So now I also have this this really ghoulish guy that I kind of want to see. So what we'll do is we'll drag him out. And he's kind of a zombie guy. And if I go to his animation, or if I go to his animated model and I change that to, and we'll rotate him. Actually, what I'll do is, let's say I want to rotate him exactly 180 degrees. I can just go into here. There. I just rotate 180 degrees. I can see his bone structure, which is kind of cool. Go back into translate here, move him down, and one thing I'm noticing is that he's kind of in shadow here, and I'd like to actually have him not be. So let's take and go to our global light here and rotate, and I should be able to kind of get it a little bit better for this view. All right, so that's pretty good. So I'm going to save my scene, and I'm going to hit play, and I can go in here and, oh, that's cool. But the one thing is he's kind of not animating. Kind of nice to see him animate. So what I can do is I have this little component, which is this called Zombie Guy. It's super simple. It just plays an idle animation on him. So let's go to Zombie Guy here in our scene, create a component, create the physics component, or create the logic component, and we'll set it to be Zombie Guy. All right, Zombie Guy it is. Go back to my scene here, and we'll go ahead and play it. And he should be idling. And he is. So let me kind of get in here. And so, yeah, so basically, he's pretty cool looking. He's got a diffuse map. He's got a normal map and a specular. And so, yeah, and very high performance GPU skinning and all that. So that's pretty slick. So one of the new things we have too is a material editor / viewer. And so the neat thing here is I can kind of go in to him and have a look. And so basically he's looking pretty cool. If I go in, all right. So right now he's using a diffuse normal specular technique. And I can go ahead and actually change that to just diffuse. And what we're seeing here is we're seeing no bump mapping. The specular is kind of out of control, and we can actually change that with the, our lighting setting and things. But so what the specular map does is it actually just tones that down and kind of constrains the specular to where it should be. If I go ahead and change this to diffuse normal, now we have his bump maps, and the specular is still pretty wild, but kind of looking like a Doom 3 guy. And I can just change him back to this. And you're going to be able to change out textures and things. This is a very early texture browser for selecting different textures there. We also have shader parameters for the different shaders for specular and emissive and all those kind of things. So yeah, that's basically where things are at now with the content pipeline. And oh, another thing is that the So basically, when we're running the game now, it's actually in its own process, which is really slick because it keeps the editor nice and clean. This is all using IPC, so the processes are in communication with each other, so we can pass things back and forth. We'll be able to debug and all those kind of things. So yeah, so that's a big change. There's a lot of changes going on with Atomic right now. A lot of new code. We are working on getting binaries up for people to test and play with. That will be happening pretty soon. We kind of went into a rabbit hole with a bunch of the new editor stuff and the new Atomic tooling, which is a command line tool, which can do basically everything the actual editor can do. But before I get rambling too much, there you have it. We have drag and drop content import for models, and we have prefabs where you can just go ahead and drag those nodes from your scene graph into your resources. And we also have, just kind of looking behind the scenes, so basically the editor is all written in TypeScript now, which is pretty slick. And that's working out really great. It's going to be really good for maintaining and extending it, and you'll be able to write plugins in JavaScript and in TypeScript, so it'll be fully extensible. And if I look at my little project here, it's pretty cool. I have all the resources, and then if I go in, there's actually a cache now. So all these are the things that are actually used by the engine. We have animations, and we have models, and we have thumbnails, and all this kind of stuff. So there's an asset database that generates all these things. And if I go into my resources, we actually have the full-on FBXs here. And so the FBXs are what you check into your source control and things, and then the engine knows how to re-import them, right? So basically, if I go ahead and I look at, like, for instance, RoboMan here, you'll never actually see this. This was all editable inside the editor itself. But basically, it's just a JSON file that kind of controls the asset importing. And I can see here that I've got things like the animations, their start time, end time, because the FBX just has one long timeline for all of his animations. And so you actually have to kind of specify, you know, where does run start and stop, where does walk start and stop. And so once you do that, that's done, and then you check this in along with the actual FBX, and your cache is all local. So basically, it's pretty slick that way. You're not checking in converted assets you're checking in the actual FBXs, which is awesome, because then if you change the FBX, it'll automatically know how to re-import that asset. And so if your artist tweaks on it, you don't have to like do this whole rigmarole. You just drag and drop the new FBX in, everything gets updated. In fact, I can kind of show that really quickly and kind of test my luck, actually. Let's say that the import here, let's just say these crates are like way too big. Just like, let's just say that they came in and they're like, they're just huge. They're like this big, right? So, whoops. So what I can actually do is inside the model importer for the crate, I can see that I can specify a scale. So let's just change this to 0.5 and hit apply. And right there, what you saw was the model actually scaled down. So this was re-imported, and then inside your scene, it actually live updates. So there's live updated textures and animations and everything right inside the editor. So as resources are changing, you can actually see those, and you don't have to like restart the editor or anything silly like that. So there you have it. The current state of the Atomic game engine, it's leveled up a lot. You can now create nodes and components and prefabs and import models and all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to stop here because otherwise I'll start rambling about some other stuff. So until next time, Josh Youngabretson from Thunder Beast Games, and I will talk to you and see you soon.